Good morning. I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso. George's destruction in the Caribbean tops this edition of Weather Center. We'll have the latest in just a moment, plus the stateside weather for your outlook for today, including possible thunderstorms for Miami, also a wet morning commute for you in Philadelphia, and the prospect for morning showers in New York City. But first, for the latest on Hurricane George, let's go to Rick Griffin in the Forecast Center.
Thanks a lot, Mark, and good morning. As you mentioned, the most intense part of George now moving away from the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and heading straight towards the Dominican Republic and Haiti at this particular time. Let's take a look at the latest information on Hurricane George. Still a very strong Category 2 hurricane. Was for a time yesterday a Category 3 storm, but there was a little weakening as the storm moved across Puerto Rico. Now as we'll talk to Dr. Steve Lyons in a minute, probably some strengthening taking place as the eye is out over water once again. In any event, top sustained winds officially are 110, the movement west at 14, the pressure 970 millibars, and the location is 18.1 north and 68 degrees west, 110 miles east of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. Well, Hurricane George's winds took their toll on Puerto Rico last night. The winds snapped trees, turning some into missiles. Heavy rain flooded San Juan, hotels and shops, and tens of thousands of people are in shelters. Hundreds of thousands in the Caribbean are without water or power this morning. And as I mentioned, now the hurricane heading for the Dominican Republic and also Haiti. Joining me this morning at the update desk, Dr. Steve Lyons. Steve, appreciate you joining us once again. What do you think is going to happen with George today? It's going to be heading into a very mountainous area of the Dominican Republic. Is that going to weaken it somewhat?
Well, it should definitely have a more profound effect on it than did the island of Puerto Rico that only weakened it very, very substantially, only 5 or 10 miles per hour. And it's already strengthening as it moves over the Mona Passage there between Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. But Dominican Republic is a larger island, and in the center of it there are mountains that go up to about 10,000 feet. So we expect it to have a little more effect on it, but it will not dissipate the hurricane. It'll continue on its westward path.
Do you see the track right down the middle of the Dominican Republic, or do you think maybe the eye might stay just along the south coast there?
Probably south to central. Oftentimes in higher island areas we see the eye sometimes shifts from one side of the mountain to the other, but that's not always the case. In this particular case, it looks right now like it's going to be primarily on the south side when it first hits.
How about the next 24 hours? I mean, a little bit later we'll talk about the possible effects on the United States, but say between now and this time tomorrow morning, where is George going to head?
It's still going to be probably over the northwest portion of the Dominican Republic, heading off to the west-northwest.
Okay, Steve, we have some changes, by the way, in the hurricane warnings. They have been discontinued, as a matter of fact, for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Now, the weather's still rough, but conditions will be improving and the seas subsiding as the day unfolds. As it stands now, hurricane warnings remain in effect for Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Haiti, also the islands of the southeast Bahamas, the Turks, and the Caicos. And as you can see, the eastern part of Cuba is under a hurricane watch. Now, here's the wind field with Hurricane George. Fairly large area of hurricane force winds. Overnight, San Juan reported a wind gust of 93 miles per hour and Roosevelt Roads 82 miles per hour. And the tropical storm force winds extend well east to the eastern tip of the Dominican Republic. Steve, again, we're looking at a closer colorized view here, and there is definitely a well-defined eye there in that Mona Passage, that strip of water in between the two islands.
Absolutely. You can see the eye right in here. You can still see the extreme southeastern eye wall over extreme western Puerto Rico in the vicinity of Mayagüez. So they're still not out of the woods yet there. Of course, the higher elevations of western Puerto Rico could still be getting winds upwards of about 80 or 90 miles per hour.
There's been a lot of rain in Puerto Rico, and I would suppose the same thing is going to happen in the Dominican Republic, because the high mountains are going to enhance the rainfall tremendously in some areas.
Yeah, that orographic lift from the mountains is very, very important to rainfall, and of course it depends on the speed of motion of the system for the total rain amount. But with your graphic lift, we could get, again, 15 to 20 inches without any problems in the higher elevations.
Well, this is a dramatic radar view right here. It's kind of on the edge of the screen, but we can plainly see the eye of George just west of Puerto Rico, and there's a little island right in the middle of the eye there.
Yeah, here's Puerto Rico here. This is the Mona Passage here. A lot of books have been written about that. That's the Isla de Mona, the island of Mona right there, and it's right in the center of the eye now as it continues to push toward the west. A rather fantastic view there, and still some very heavy showers here moving over Ponce, and also this other band here over the general vicinity of Mayaguez. So the weather should be improving, but there's still a lot of rain there, so be very careful with flash flooding. Sometimes it takes there's a little delay between the maximum amount of rain and when the flooding actually occurs, so pay attention to the local flash flood watches and warnings.
As the runoff comes down.
Right.
Okay, Steve, we go to the Atlantic satellite picture, and we know George is right about in here this morning. How about 3 or 4 days down the road? Where do you think it's going to be?
Well, this hurricane has continued on a rather steady track all the way along to here, and it's not going to do too much differently the next 24 to 48 hours. We expect it somewhere in the southeastern Bahamas here in another 24 to 36. And at 72, the National Hurricane Center's 5 a.m. forecast puts it basically right in just to the east of the central Florida Keys or southeast of Miami. So the southern tip of Florida, you better monitor this very, very carefully. It's still a long way out, and keep in mind our forecast here out of 72 hours is roughly 300 nautical miles, so that's a large difference in where we expect it to be, where it could be, but nevertheless, it's heading in your general direction.
If it is there, it could be a very serious situation. So we hope you folks will continue to monitor the situation. We'll have frequent updates for you, and don't forget online you can visit us at weather.com. And now back to the studio with Mark Mancuso.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And as we take a look at your radar this morning, a lot of rain coming in through the northeast for your morning commute. Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. Well, to the west, we are seeing a line of intense thunderstorms moving down through the Ozarks. That's all along and ahead of a frontal zone. Behind it, much cooler air coming into the Great Lakes today for Chicago and Detroit. And for those of you in the northeast, we'll be looking at a much different afternoon and evening from Boston to New York to Philadelphia and right down to Washington, D.C. The winds will be shifting into the northeast, and the cooler air will be moving in. In the south, another steamy, summery day with scattered afternoon storms mainly along the Gulf Coast and in the vicinity.
And thanks for tuning in to the Weather Channel. Puerto Rico is still being pounded by Hurricane George, and the Dominican Republic is bracing for it. About 3/4 of Puerto Rico's residents are now without drinking water. Even more are without electricity. So far, 5 people have been reported killed in Puerto Rico due to the hurricane, and President Clinton has declared both Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands disaster areas. That tops our look today at the tropics. And let's go ahead and check it out, this edition of your Tropical Update. And you can see Hurricane George as it continues to move past Puerto Rico, but still very strong winds affecting that, and also very heavy rainfall across the island. Now it is moving to the west and heading toward the Dominican Republic, with hurricane force winds just now beginning to reach the Dominican Republic. Here are the latest coordinates from the National Hurricane Center as of 5 a.m. Eastern Time. 18.1 north, 68.0 west, and that is 110 miles to the east of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, and that is just about right there, and it continues to move closer to that area. Maximum sustained winds are now at 110 miles an hour, and as it continues to be out of the open water, slight strengthening will be possible before it makes landfall in the next couple of hours. Still moving to the west at 14 miles an hour, and the pressure now at 970 millibars. Here's the strike probability over the next several days. As it continues to push to the west, a slight jog to the northwest is anticipated. It will be moving across all of the Dominican Republic, running into the very high mountains. That may weaken it somewhat over the next 48 hours, and then the general projected path continues it to the northwest, possibly affecting the Florida Keys and also South Florida within the next 72 hours. You can see here that's the general forecast track here from the National Hurricane Center. However, the farther out in time you get, the margin of error increases, and so we could see it go more to the west or possibly a little bit more to the northeast. So if you do live in the southeastern portion of the country, you want to stay tuned to the Weather Channel and monitor this situation very closely over the next several days. Well, here's a look at the latest warnings and advisories coming from the National Hurricane Center. Warnings now out continuing for Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, also for Haiti. We're also seeing warnings out for the Turks and Caicos Islands and the southeastern Bahamas. We have hurricane watches in effect for eastern Cuba. A warning meaning that you could see hurricane force winds within the next 24 hours. A watch would be hurricane force winds beyond that, from 24 to 36 hours for eastern Cuba. The maximum sustained winds at 110 miles an hour, and hurricane force winds are extending out from the center of George, 60 miles. The tropical storm force winds are out from the center, 175 miles, and some of the most of those are now on the northeastern side of the center of circulation. However, as you can see, the hurricane force winds are now beginning to move over the Dominican Republic. The movement to the west, and you can see how the eye has reformed as it moved off Puerto Rico and back out into the Mona Passage, out over the open waters. It reformed very quickly. Last night we had reports of very heavy rainfall over Puerto Rico, continuing to rain there, and folks in the Dominican Republic need to be bracing for very, very strong winds. We could see more damage as this continues to push over the islands. We also have a tropical storm Ivan, and that is well out to sea and forecast to continue to move away from land, and tropical storm Jeanne just now forming off the coast of Africa. We'll monitor that one also over the next several days. Stay with us for more.
How can you plan your day when you don't know what the weather's going to be like? I know people like to plan ahead for their day. I can help you out.
Every day, more people are choosing Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse, and here's why. Do-it-yourselfers don't always have time to do it yourself. So Lowe's installation specialists can have your purchases installed for you. Things like carpeting, water heaters, garage doors,